Hi there people, long time no see. Hopefully you're all good. Now some of you by now may already have noticed that I really like those weird, creepy and strange places all over the world. In fact, that's how I started this channel, by making one such story, the one about Kowloon Walled City. You should check it out just to see how I started this. And then I also made one about Chernobyl. You should also check that one out. So now I figured out, you know what, it's time for one more of these stories. Hence the title of this video. So today we're going to take a look at the famous Grande Hotel of Beira in Mozambique. Now this is no ordinary hotel by any means. Rest assured, every single one of my stories has some elements of weird and interesting. So stick till the end to see what's all the buzz about this hotel. But before we begin any of that, why don't you like the video? And subscribe while you're at it, if you like these kinds of videos, of course. All the way back in 1932, a first design for a certain hotel with a large Olympic swimming pool just mere meters away from Indian Ocean, between the Buzi River on one side and the busy sea harbor of Beira on the other, was made by brothers Robelo de Andrade. But it was not until Jose Porto of the Cabinet of Colonial Urbanization made the original design concept for the hotel in 1953, and then the royal company operating in the Portuguese-owned Mozambique commissioned the development. The duty fell on an architect, Francisco de Castro. Now, in case you're wondering why are all these Portuguese names doing in Mozambique, well, it has little something to do with Mozambique being a part of a Portuguese-owned colony. In fact, that royal company that I mentioned, the Companhia de Mozabique, had concessions in several different provinces in the land. And in fact, when their concession ended, they still owned the businesses on the land, making them de facto owners of the land. The owner of the company was the brother of the Governor General of the Mozambique, who then had further ties with the fascist dictator Salazar all the way back to Portugal. So you can see how it was easy for them to exploit the land and the ownership however they wanted. Now, as the fascism was progressing throughout Portugal, so it was the same in Mozambique. The influence of the neighboring Rhodesia was also seeping into the Beira and affecting the looks on the streets and the looks on the hotel itself. The Art Deco was where it was at. The inside of the hotel lacked any intricate design of the previous Baroque style. It was mostly clean with modern materials, quite unusual for this place of the earth. But be that as it may, 1955 came and it was grand opening time. The hotel was open for business, well, mostly for VIPs from Rhodesia, Portugal, the Union on South Africa, celebrities and whatnot. In other words, white population. And not just any white population, but rather wealthy white population. They targeted mostly white middle-class families, but that was a little bit too expensive for most families. You'll soon see why. For native black people, it was a no-go zone. You couldn't even use the pool. No, let me rephrase that. You couldn't even go to the beach, for crying out loud. Now, this might come as a shock to you, but the hotel was only operational for about 8 years, and in those 8 years it was losing money daily. It was just not profitable. First of all, the ruling Portuguese party was staying there whenever and for however long they wanted, rent-free. Second of all, the wealthy middle-class white families from Rhodesia had to travel around 600 kilometers and drive for around 9 hours just to get there, and that was mostly not feasible. And thirdly, the most tourists preferred to go to the strictly tourist zone of Makuti, which was only 8 kilometers from the city center, for the simple reason that swimming on the beach in front of the hotel was forbidden for some reason. And let's not forget the construction costs were way off target, in fact 3 times over the estimated cost. So there you go, 8 years of operation and it was done. Although it was operational 2 times after its closure, once in 1963 for a foreign delegation and once in 1971 for a wedding. The wedding of a daughter of a high-ranking official of the state. A white wedding of the sorts. So there you go, that's the brief history of the hotel. Well, the brief history of the hotel while it was operational, but that's not all. I don't do these simple stories, as you know. So let's move on. In 1974, a storm was brewing all the way back in Portugal. A storm by the name Carnation Revolution. On the 25th of April, the left-leaning military officers organized a coup and overthrew at the time the Estado Novo regime. You know, those authoritarian dicks. Now what this did was start a chain reaction that shifted the Portugal into a democratic state, which then also affected all of its colonies. The very next year, in 1975, the Mozambique gained its independence from Portugal, and Mozambique Liberation Front assumed command. Now what better way to make this official than to start a wedding in the now famous Grande Hotel? So they did. The very next day, the wedding was held in the hotel. The new regime meant that not only was there a political shift, but rather a shift within the hotel itself. New owners of the hotel were the members of the Mozambique Liberation Front, the Frelimo, as they were later known. The bar at the swimming pool became a place for the Frelimo Revolutionary Committee. They were the main acting branch of Frelimo, responsible for the new socialist propaganda. The main hall and the entrance was mostly used for gathering events, parties and other social gatherings, while the basement, well, that became a prison for those opposing the now new regime. Essentially, Frelimo took ownership of the whole surrounding area, which resulted in then the exodus of mostly Portuguese rather than Mozambican people. But they did not take the ownership of the hotel, which still belonged to the Portuguese Grupo Entreposto, which was the continuation of the Campagna de Mozambique. Quite a conundrum, I know, but bear with me. It gets even weirder at the end. At this time, the Cold War was not only the USA versus USSR thing. It was now a full-blown communism versus capitalism war, which also affected Mozambique. In 1977, the civil war broke out in the province of Sofala. With the backing of Rhodesian forces and South African forces, the now established Renamo forces were created in order to destroy anything with communist ties. The main aim being Frelimo and its strategic locations. In response to this, the Frelimo tightened its defense, and the Grand Hotel, which was at the time political headquarters, became also military headquarters. Now this went on and on. The Renamo would launch guerrilla tactics and attacks at whatever they thought was strategic position, and then subsequently Frelimo would reclaim that position back, until the shift of power in the Rhodesian side happened. The ruling party was overthrown and the country was renamed Zimbabwe in 1980. Now this did not mean that it was all smooth sailing for Mozambique and the city of Beira, mostly since now the Zimbabwe needed an alternative route for their import and export of goods. The previous route had to go through South Africa, and now with the shift in government, Zimbabwe was now boycotting the apartheid government of the South Africa. So they did the second best thing. They established a neutral zone in Beira and thus allowed them the entrance to the sea. The neutral zone logically attracted refugees from all over the African continent. Anyone who was close by would go to Beira. Which brings us to Grande Hotel today. Can you guess what happened to it? Of course, it became the ideal option for all those refugees to come and stay. With 116 rooms, the Olympic swimming pool, the rooms all furnished, decorated. What more can you ask, realistically? So it basically switched roles again from the military headquarters to the refugee camp, and it stayed that way till 1992, until the end of the Civil War. Now this did not mean that the refugees would leave the premises suddenly. No, in fact they just changed their legal standpoint on the matter. In the beginning they were refugees running from the war, and now they are basically squatters owning the hotel. In 2008 the hotel boasted around 1077 occupants, but that number quickly rose. Now it is estimated that up to 3000 people live there. Slowly but surely the hotel started deteriorating in the hands of the refugees, but I mean there was little they can do, or could do. Everything of any value was stripped from the walls and halls and taken, hoping that it could be exchanged for some money or at least some other living necessity. All the windows from all the rooms were taken and sold. Now it was basically a shell of a hotel. Plumbing and wiring didn't fare any better. They were salvaged. Everything was stripped from the bathrooms as well, all the way from the bathtubs, boilers, to the ceramic tiles. Everything was taken and sold. High-value luxury stuff was of course the first to go. Stuff like marble, decorative ornaments from various rooms, and chandeliers as well. Taken and sold since the new residents now needed some other luxury, like running water, electricity, and garbage disposal, or many others. The wood and wooden parquet was stripped and used as fuel for fire. It's hard to look at the pictures side by side and not be amazed. Not only how it looked back then, some 60-ish years ago, and how it was beautiful, but rather how we can thrive in these circumstances. You could even say that it went from Art Deco to a structural minimalism in a matter of years. Nowadays there are no doors, there are no windows on rooms, and no running water either. In fact, everything essential for living conditions is lacking. The only thing it does provide is the roof over their heads. Well, technically there is only one place with electricity, the side section of the hotel, which the residents themselves remodeled into a makeshift cinema. And I use the term cinema loosely here, it's just a few chairs and an old TV. But it's the experience that counts, not the 3D setting around it, am I right? As for the swimming pool, the water is used for washing and, as you can imagine, is not quite sanitary. In fact, according to Red Cross, it has high chances of diarrhea, cholera, scabies, and HIV/AIDS. Oh, and malaria. I feel like you're basically throwing the dice every time you're going into the water. Come on baby, give me diarrhea. Give me that sweet, sweet diarrhea, please. I'll be a good boy, I promise. I'll be the goodest boy there is. Fuck. Wanted diarrhea, got cholera. Well, I'll just consider it a diarrhea with a twist. And the nearby pool bar, the one where the Frelimo committee was located, is now used as urinal. So they're basically pissing all over the socialism. Now, to be clear, as it usually is with these kinds of places and these kinds of situations, chaos and nothingness around does not reflect the people living there. The communities bond over the mutual struggle. Neighbors become best friends, the families that stick together through thick and thin stay together. Not all needs to be grim and dark, you know. People are quite colorful, and they are in fact what brings color to this otherwise dull and boring place. In fact, one might think that this is where gangs, robbers and lawlessness comes to sleep at night. But you'd be wrong. There are systems put in place by the communities in order to have some semblance of law and order. One could say that these instances of hatred for the hotel inhabitants come from the local people of Beira. In fact, they even have a term for them, Watomuno, which means not from around here, and that is mostly a derogatory term used to describe all those who are excluded for Beira's social and economic life. But there are rules, well, only two rules, but then again, still 2 is more than 0, right? The one is respect is necessary, so respect one another. And the second one is that hotel is open for anyone who needs shelter, which is kinda cool, I gotta admit it. Even though it's overcrowded, it lacks running water or electricity, lacks windows, lacks doors, but if you are in an emergency and you need a brief shelter, we got you covered. Anyone who by some miraculous magic improves their life and manages to move out of the hotel can then further rent out their specific room to someone else. But in most cases, residents end up living their whole lives in the hotel. There is an example of a family who was living there for 3 generations. Now, the organization of the hotel is quite interesting. They have a head secretary who runs the community and resolves all the issues that someone might have. He is in fact elected by voting on council meetings, and council meetings take place once a month to discuss what is on their agenda for next month and to see if there are any emergencies that need immediate action. They even have their own security patrol, which was mostly made from volunteer residents who are willing to help. There are flea markets on several spots with residents willing to sell or bargain with their possessions in exchange for something else. There are also organized sports meetings almost every day. They mostly gather in front and play football. In a sense, Grande Hotel has become its own self-contained ecosystem, and I'm all for it. In fact, I love that shit. Now you might be thinking, alright, just tell me when it's gonna go down, how it's gonna go down, and what are they gonna do with the poor people left behind. Well, let me be the first one to tell you that there are several issues when it comes to demolition attempts or forceful removal. One of the issues is that the city of Beira does not own the land. Because if you still remember, the ownership of the land is still in the hands of the Portuguese Grupo Entreposto. Well, the hotel at least. And if you know greedy companies, they are quite willing to sell something that's not profitable, but for a hefty sum of money, which no one is willing to pay, and hence they are in a stalemate like this. The other issue is that even if they somehow manage to buy the hotel, the demolition would further bleed them dry. And by them I mean the city of Beira. The cost of demolition would have to be covered by some foreign investor, and if someone is going to invest in demolition, then they would have to own the land, which is all fine and dandy. But that brings us to our final and third problem, or rather issue. And that last and the biggest issue is that if they are going to demolish the building, they would need to relocate all the residents, thousands and thousands of people. And if you look at some reports, they are stating that at least 5,000 people live there. Cost of all that would be astronomical, and since Beira is not really a wealthy city, the chances of any of that happening anytime soon are slim. But the hotel itself is not really in the best shape itself. There are signs of deterioration on the walls and other places. If just one floor gives in and collapses, the loss of life would be catastrophic. There were already reports of children losing their lives by jumping and falling into the empty elevator shafts. And not just elevator shafts, by jumping from rooftops and even their own windowless rooms. Also, the lack of any organized or municipal garbage disposal service means that garbage is everywhere. And I do mean literally everywhere. If you add that to a already huge hazard of dipping in the swimming pool, walking around the premises is also a huge gamble of seeing what kind of disease you will get today. But then again, be that as it may, since no one is willing to relocate, help or provide for these people, for now at least they have their own roof over their heads. And sometimes that can be enough. People are amazing sometimes. We tend to thrive in the shittiest of places. Anyway, that's it for today for this one. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I liked writing and filming it. The next episode should be in just a few days. So, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in a couple of days, I guess. See ya.